As we draw ever closer to the NBA postseason, the play-in is just a few days away. The Denver Nuggets have fired their head coach, Michael Malone. And to say the move was shocking would be an understatement. Oftentimes, a lot of head coach firings, no matter how surprising they are, there are some major factors that you can point to. And with the NBA being a business, perhaps the biggest one is success. But this is a head coach who won a championship 2 years ago with this team. And led by a generational player in Nikola Jokic, they were always going to be within contention. But now bringing in a new head coach, that's going to be a major shift. And all but puts an end to your hopes at a championship this season. And what this serves as, it's a stark reminder of the brutal reality of being a head coach in the modern NBA. You have to always have your bags packed because you never know when your time might come. As a matter of fact, Joe Mazzulla said precisely that about never knowing when it could be your last day. And that's someone who just won a championship. What time it is to be a head coach in the NBA. We're going to be breaking it down today on State of the Association. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Nash Roberts. First off, let's get into what we can kind of take away from this firing, what it really means. And we saw this also earlier this year with the Luka Doncic trade. No one is truly untouchable in the NBA anymore. And later down today, we're going to break that down, why that is, some potential reasons, but this is an NBA champion head coach. And so often when a head coach is fired, it's because there's question marks about their ability to elevate a team to that level. For a long time, championship-winning head coaches had got the benefit of the doubt, but we've seen it with Michael Malone, we've seen it with Frank Vogel, we've seen it with Mike Budenholzer. That's not really something you can rely on anymore. The most recent NBA champion head coaches, a lot of them are out of a job right now, or the job that they were in. And it really just kind of makes you wonder who is truly safe. Is Joe Mazzulla safe, the head of the Celtics that finally took the duo of Brown and Tatum and led them to a title after they had failed for so long? Is JJ Redick safe? All the players seem to really like him. But if they don't win a title with Luka and LeBron, is that seen as a proper reason to call for his head over in LA? A move like this, it seems, no matter what you do, are you really safe? That has to be a question in the minds of the coaches. And there's definitely a psychological factor to it that might affect the coaches as well, because oftentimes as a head coach, you have your vision for the team. Eric Spoelstra, he's a big believer in the Miami Heat culture. Greg Popovich, fundamental team basketball. But what happens if that down year leads to a little bit of a... if that philosophy leads to a little bit of a down year? Do you have to change it up so you can maintain your job security? What is your job security? That kind of has to play a factor now, I think. Now, for everyone listening to this, I'm sure you're probably either in school or working a job. Maybe both. Imagine at that job, someone who was the best employee of 2023, they're gone now. They've been fired almost without notice. And last year, they were still really good. The Denver Nuggets were really good last year. They were a top 3 seed in the West. And this year, there's a lot of great talent in the work field. So seeding isn't necessarily the end-all be-all, but that's still pretty good. That seeding is still near the top. They're still one of the best employees in terms of how the performance is panning out. The results, the figures, the metrics that we're seeing in terms of the overall team. And now they're gone. And you have to wonder how much that plays into the psychology of head coaches and how they feel about their job security. Especially because oftentimes with a firing like this, say the head coach was successful, there might be a saying that, hey, maybe the head coach had lost the locker room, right? Maybe the players hadn't necessarily trusted him. And then you look at the firing earlier this year of Taylor Jenkins of the Memphis Grizzlies, where the players loved him. And almost all of the players on that team had spent their entire careers playing under Taylor Jenkins. And there were some frustrations, but largely that was with the assistant staff that had come in. John Morant was a little bit frustrated with the scheme. That scheme was orchestrated by the new assistant coaches. And Taylor Jenkins, what he did, he tried to ease John Morant's worries and instill some older plays that they'd used in years past for him specifically. The players loved him, and they were heartbroken and shocked at the move. So that's two opposite sides of the coin. Whereas Taylor Jenkins, who the players loved, and Michael Malone, who was a championship caliber head coach. So there was no definitive blueprint for how to be a head coach for a long time, how to maintain that, how to be stable, and have some job security as a head coach in the modern NBA. We thought the Memphis move was shocking. This one is even greater. And then we get into the why. Why is this happening? If this move is so shocking, there has to be some kind of reason behind it, right? It can't just be completely out of nowhere. And I think the biggest factor is that there are a lot of voices out there now, whether it's social media or just major sports networks. There's a lot of people out there to just voice an opinion. I'm doing that right now. Now, the front office isn't going to just listen to some random on NBA Twitter or watch one YouTube video and decide, hey, head coach, you're out of here. That's not the way it works. Rather, it represents that your mistakes are magnified. You are put under a microscope, and each and everything you do is going to be criticized by some area of the media. Whether that reaches national levels or not, everything you do is going to be looked at. And when there's a lot of accounts that are looking at you, all of a sudden that can kind of shift public opinion. And then maybe the fans agree with you, and then that seeps into the arena, and then it gets up to the front office, and they hear all these complaints maybe. Just kind of a lack of patience that is created by this social media culture, by this highlight culture, very much so instant gratification. What have you done for me lately? Directly, one person on Twitter is not going to change the mind of the Denver front office, but indirectly, how we consume media nowadays can majorly affect the security of a head coach. Because especially with social media, what it is designed to do is to keep you on there for as long as possible by keeping you stimulated. You might be on TikTok, you might be on Instagram, and you're scrolling away. And you're not really taking everything in. You're not really consuming it. Everything is at face value. But what that instills is that there's an expectation for you to be stimulated and succeeding at all times, when in terms of reality, that's so often not the case. So often patience is a virtue and something that you really, really need. And as a business, the association is always going to be a what have you done for me lately business. But especially in the age of social media, that instantaneous success in lack of patience is only growing stronger. It's become ubiquitous. You look at a player over in Denver, in Russell Westbrook, his last 6 head coaches, only one of them is still a head coach in the NBA. You had Mike D'Antoni, Scott Brooks, Frank Vogel, Ty Lue, Darvin Ham, and Michael Malone now. Ty Lue is the only one left as a head coach. This is a growing trend, and I think a lot of it comes down to how we consume media. You see it with players as well. There is a lack of players that might stay on one team throughout the course of their career. It was never uber common necessarily, but it's a real surprise if it happens nowadays. You look at Marcus Smart, someone who is seen as the heart and soul of the Boston Celtics, someone who could be a Celtics lifer potentially. He gets shipped out. Luka Doncic, a potential Dallas Maverick for life, he gets shipped out. Damian Lillard was the face of loyalty in the NBA. He gets shipped out of Portland. He wants out of Portland. And I'm not quite certain that that is a coincidence. And with the rise of criticism from every corner in media, I think that absolutely plays a role in the potential perception of a head coach, and with that, the security of a head coach. Lastly, what does this all mean for the Denver Nuggets? And there's really not much of a precedent for a move like this when you consider all the factors involved, from his championship pedigree to having a potential MVP on your team, a potential four-time MVP on your team, as well as it being this late into the season. We've never seen a head coaching firing quite like this. So there's no real proper precedent that we can compare it to for the Nuggets. So I think this signifies that they did not feel like they were contenders this year. If they were, there would be no reason to blow it up, to fire the head coach of your contender. They just didn't feel like they had it in them this year. Because now bringing in an interim, trying to shake things up, that's not going to bring you a title immediately. And they don't expect it to, in my opinion. This is a team that felt like they didn't have what it took this year. And they want to start fresh. And with that, it was time to see Michael Malone and hand him his papers, relieve him of his duties. It was a shocking move for sure, but one that does kind of reveal the workings of the inner office for Denver. They don't feel like they're winning a title this year. And so they're going to bring someone new in over the offseason, and they're going to have an offseason to work it out. Maybe as soon as possible. Maybe this firing was to bring in a head coach as soon as possibly can, develop some chemistry in the playoffs, and go into the next season with a head coach who you've already had some playoff runs with, a couple games with, as well as a full offseason, and just be better next year. Do I agree with it? No. It is a very surprising move, and one that there's very little precedent for, but it does reveal kind of what Denver's thinking. And it's really interesting that they don't view themselves as contenders, given just the fact that you have Jokic on the team. That feels like someone that can carry any kind of team to some level of success. But ultimately, what a move this was. What a firing this was. We thought the Jenkins one was surprising. This one even more so. It really just shows the reality of being a head coach in the modern NBA. There's criticism coming from all corners. Your job security is not very safe no matter what you do, whether you're a locker room guy or you've got some championship pedigree. In conclusion, it's harder than ever to be a head coach in the modern NBA. Through media and pressure to win, instantaneous success, no matter what you do, you better have been doing something for them lately. And not just doing something for them lately, not just being a playoff team, but doing something really extraordinary lately. From the way that we consume media to the way that that can seep into the perception of a coach, it is a brutal reality and no easy task being a head coach in the modern NBA. That's all for today's episode of Save the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts. Thank you very much for listening. I didn't love the way this one came out. I think I had a pretty solid idea coming in. I didn't execute it to the fullest extent that I feel like I could have, but it was pretty solid. I think we've been putting out some pretty decent stuff lately, and we're trying to get better each and every time. Thank you very much for listening. This has been State of the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts.